Evan.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for that warm welcome.
You want to stand or sit?
I'll sit because I'm lazy. So.
Well, let's take it from the beginning, because I just told the audience a little bit of your history. But in the beginning, I mean, I heard that your interest of acting actually started in a very, very early age, and that was by playing with Lego. Is that true?
Boy, you do your research. Wow. Yeah, that is true. I used to set up. I have 3 older brothers, but they're a couple of years older than me. So I spent a lot of time by myself because I wasn't old enough. Which also has to do with my getting into like comedy and stuff, because I was always trying to sort of get my, get attention, steal attention from my older brothers. But yeah, I would set up like little Lego worlds of my own. And I wouldn't really like play with them, like, mess around with them. I would just like set them up the way I liked it, and then I would just lay there and just sort of imagine what was going on in the buildings or whatever. And my family would walk through the room and I'd just be laying there staring at some Lego. And so, yeah, I think that has something to do with just, relying so much on my imagination, which is essentially what acting is, just continuing to do that sort of child's play thing, but be allowed to do it as an adult.
Yeah, and prior to getting where you are today as acting, I heard that you started out as an extra, and I even saw a FedEx commercial from 1994 with you in it.
Oh,
so I'm curious how
okay, you're talking about that. That's not me. I did a FedEx commercial. I thought you were okay. There is a FedEx commercial that I did, but I wasn't an extra. I played a guy who was like a computer tech guy, and the premise of the spot was that I'm just talking a lot of computer jargon and talking about geothermal satellites, and the people across that I'm pitching this to are just sort of staring at me because they don't understand the nerd jargon. And that was probably my foray into, being like the quintessential nerd. And that was during a time when I first started acting professionally, where for a while there in the States, I was the tech guy in all the commercials, because this is back when I had hair, so I had like a big, head of poofy curly hair, and when I was trying to make a living as an actor, like all my other actor friends were all waiters and stuff, and I couldn't get a job waiting tables, so I taught myself computer programming. So I really was the tech nerd during the .com boom. I don't know if you guys experienced that the same way we did in the States. But so like other people would go into these commercial auditions and like play the tech nerd, and I would go, go on my lunch break from actually being a tech nerd and walk into the audition, and the casting director would be like, okay, this guy's really like a computer guy, and I'd be like, yeah, sit down and turn on the video camera, because I'm not doing a thing, I got this, I know this is me. So yeah, and anyway, I thought you were talking about that FedEx commercial that I did. I saw the one that you're talking about online. Someone posted that on and tagged me on it or something, but that's actually not me.
It's a very resemblance, but
yes.
Yeah, great to know. Everything you find on the internet isn't true.
Right, that's true.
Well, and you said you did roles as a tech nerd, and you were a tech nerd.
Yes.
And I mean, one of your most iconic characters is Stuart, who works in a comic book store.
This is true.
Which you did as prior to an actor.
Yes, I actually did work in a comic book store. That was actually before I was a tech nerd. I worked at a comic book store, and not even because I had any interest in comic books. I just had a friend. I needed a job, and I had a friend that worked there, and they got me in there, and I worked for years in a comic book store in Manhattan. But it's just a coincidence. When I got hired on The Big Bang Theory, they had no knowledge of this. Just a very weird coincidence. And now I've been on the show for, the show's been on for 12 years, and I worked at a comic book store for years, so I've spent most of my adult life in a comic book store in one form or another.
And that makes me curious, besides the takes, do you read the comic in the comic book store on the set?
I do, but it's more like I more browse. They stock new stuff every time there's a scene in the comic book store. They will have some new things or some new statues and stuff, and I'll pick up the graphic novels and browse through them. But I'm not allowed to take them away from the set, so I usually I've started a lot of graphic novels that I haven't finished because I sort of start there, and it helps me get into character, just being on that set, having worked in a comic book store and picking up a comic and just start reading a comic. It makes it very easy. It's much less taxing for my brain to have to imagine, being in a comic book store when there's all that stuff, and I could just start reading a comic book and I'm just sort of there. There's no work.
Yeah, and prior to portraying Stuart, I also heard that you auditioned for the parts of both Sheldon, Leonard, and Barry. Is that true?
Sheldon, Leonard, and who?
Barry Kripke.
Oh, right, yeah. Actually, Barry was... the guy that plays Barry is actually a friend of mine and a writing partner, because I also write. John Bowie, who plays Kripke, the guy with the lisp on the show, which is another weird coincidence, because he and I know each other from doing commercials and stuff in New York. And Chuck Lorre, the creator of the show, offered me that role, because I had come in for one of the other roles, and I couldn't do it, and then he wanted me to do Kripke, and I was doing another movie or something, and I'm glad that I wasn't available, because I love the role of Stuart, and yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you've been Stuart for 11 years now.
Yeah.
How does it feel now when the series is shut down?
It's so fun to work on the show. It's the most fun that I've had as an actor. And I think one of the reasons why the show has gone on for as long as it has is because everybody gets along so well. It really is like a family type of a thing, so it's going to be sad. I know everybody's going to be crying. I probably won't cry. I'm not a big crier, but there will be crying. I'll be upset. I'll get a headache and a sore throat from holding back the tears. But I'm also excited to move on and do something other than Stuart, because it's been so long that I've been doing just this one character, so it's bittersweet.
Yeah, and talking about bittersweet is some kind of a taste. I'm curious to know the taste of a duck beak.
I know where he's going with this. So, backstage, there is always like a table with food, but when we're taping the show, it's dark back there. They had like a plate of food and dishes, and one of them was duck. And so I took some duck. I was like, oh, this is, fancy duck. And I brought it up to my dressing room, which was also really dark. There was just one little light on the table, and I was eating the duck. and it was really tough. And I was like, could barely cut it, and I was like, this is totally overcooked. What's the deal here? And like I was like biting, and normally I like my stuff overcooked because I'm paranoid about germs. So I start biting into it, and I can't even bite through it. It's like hard, like a shell, and I'm like, what the? And I bring it towards the lamp, and I'm looking at it, and it's like all veiny and sinewy and gross, and I realize I'm looking into the neck of the head of a duck that I had just been gnawing on the beak of a duck. Yeah, so I have not eaten duck beak, but I have chewed on duck beak, like a bone. And that's that.
I think that is worth an applause, isn't it?
Thank you. I'm not sure that's worth an applause. I think a moan, but yeah.
I mean, Stuart wasn't a regular until episode 6. And beside the main couples Andrade, he has appeared on more episodes than Mrs. Volovich. Why do you think Stuart became so popular?
I think partly just because the comic book store set is so cool. Yeah, I'm hesitant to take any direct credit for it. But one thing that the writers have said is that as the show has gone on and the main characters become more developed, they've all got girlfriends and, you know, advanced in their careers, and they've all become more adults. My character has sort of regressed and gone in the opposite direction. And the writers said that that was intentional to sort of balance out the dynamic of the group as a whole, which I guess makes sense.
Yeah, and talking about popularity, I mean, as an actor, you have a trademark style of your own, and you have been praised from the fans for your performance in Ugly Betty, My Name is Earl, and Big Bang Theory. Why do you think people love you so much? I
don't know. I think because I tend to do roles, I'm just thinking about this now. I might even be wrong, I don't know. This is just off the top of my head. I don't think about this, or much of anything really. I think because Stuart represents a part of Stuart, and the roles that I tend to do tend to be people that are more vulnerable and insecure, and so many movies portray like heroes and characters of strength, and I think there's like a whole aspect to all of us, the part of us that's uncertain, especially like in quote-unquote nerd culture, you know, people like that. When I was, like, now there's Comic-Cons all over the world, and being a nerd, actually, oh boy, I'm all over the place. Sorry, this is difficult to follow. Just bear with me, folks. Buckle up, because I can feel myself going way off the rails here. What was the question? What?
Why do you think people love you so much? I mean, you've been praised.
Right, yeah, boy, did I go off track there. Anything to heap praise on myself. I will do whatever it takes. I will run the hell out of here before I accept a compliment. I think because, yeah, the roles that I do, I don't know, I mean, people tell me that they identify with being, you know, like I represent loneliness and you know, uncertainty, and yeah, I guess you don't see that as much in film and TV roles, but it is a part of all of us. Like that's one of the things that I like about The Big Bang Theory in particular, is that everybody knows. Everybody has somebody in their family or circle of friends that is that one person. Like everybody has a Sheldon. everybody, you know, knows a penny. And at the same time, I think all of those archetypes where we all have those aspects of ourselves as well. Like all of us have a little bit of Stewart, and all of us sometimes are a Sheldon. It seemed like I had more, I had no more. That's as far as I could take that thought.
And that makes me curious, if everybody has a piece of different personality, how big is your piece as a drawer or painter? Because I saw an Instagram drawing in October that I think is very, very nice.
Oh.
And that makes me curious, is painting and drawing something that you do regularly, or is it just a hobby, something that you want to do more of? Or
I enjoy it. It's not, I don't take it very seriously. It's my creative thing that I don't get paid for, because I also write. I write and I act, and both of those things professionally, so there's always like an anxiety attached to it, because it's like I have to be good, because I gotta feed my dogs, and you know, daddy's gotta bring home the dog food. But I also like, drawing for me is sort of a way to relax and be able to be expressive creatively, and there's absolutely no stakes. And it's something that I picked up actually when I worked in the comic book store, because everybody that worked there were artists, and I was around art all the time, and it's just, I've always doodled and stuff like that, and I've been doing it ever since the first iPad came out. Like I had always had an interest in drawing and painting, but I hate getting messy, so I've never actually used natural media. But when the iPads came out and they had the paint programs and the stylus and stuff, I sort of gravitated towards that. It's just a hobby of mine. Maybe I should post more stuff online, but I'm very insecure about it.
I think you should, because you got a lot of credits for that painting.
Oh, thank you.
And you told me recently that you do create, and I want you to tell us about the Dark Minions.
Oh. Dark Minions was a script that John Bowie, the guy that plays Kripke, and I wrote a sci-fi comedy, which Amazon bought the pilot for, but didn't pick it up as a series because they suck. Well, actually, it was logistically difficult because we decided, neither of us had any idea what was the production process for doing an animated comedy. It was animated, stop motion animation, you know, like Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline and like that. Do you guys, are you into, anybody here into stop motion animation?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love that stuff. Paranorman and I can't think of the others. But there wasn't enough time that development cycle to do a full version of it, so they only animated like 6 minutes of it. And then it was the first year that Amazon was doing new content, and so they sort of they put all their new pilots online and let just customers decide which pilots they were going to pick up. And people were just sort of angry because they were like, what is this? It's not even finished. Because it was like some of it was animated, and then there were other parts that were just like still pictures where they were going to do more animation. So it wasn't received very well, so it didn't get picked up. But it's still, and he and I have written a couple of scripts. We sold a couple to Fox and ABC. None of them have turned into series, but that one was, I still believe in that one. I hope one day we can go back to that and produce it fully, because I think it's still the funniest thing that we've written. It's about two slackers that get jobs on board an evil space station, and they don't necessarily agree with the politics of their evil boss, but one of them's got student loans to pay back and the other's got alimony, so they just it's just like a job.
Yeah, we're kind of running out of time. I would love to go on forever, but I'm also curious to know a little bit more about Kevin. I know that you're a big fan of board games, and that makes me curious, how many board games do you have back home, and which one is your favorite?
I have too many. Probably about, I don't know, 50 or 60. And I've played most of them around once. Because I always imagine that I'll be able to rope people into playing with me. But they're used to like Monopoly or maybe Settlers of Catan. And then I break out these long rule books that take like an hour to learn, and everybody's eyes glaze over. And they're like, what, Kevin? No. So, yeah.
Cool. And as one of the final question for you is that, be ready for this one.
Uh-oh.
You attended the College of Staten Island and then transferred to the American Academy of Dramatic Art. You even studied in the HB studio in Greenwich Village. But I'm curious, why didn't you go to your high school prom?
I think we all know why I didn't go to high school. I wasn't like I had a thing against it. I just didn't have a date, and I had no date and no sisters.
Thank you so much for that honesty.
Thank you,
ladies and gentlemen. Kevin Sussman.
Thank you.
Yes. Keep that applause for Kevin.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin.